All right, everyone. Bleav and Vikings back on the air for today, Monday, August 12th. It's yours truly, Wobby, with you as always. And since it is Monday and it is a Vikings post game, we have Bryant McKinnie on board as well. He and I will break down what we saw in the Vikings preseason opener and take a look at what's ahead for the Vikings this week as they get ready for the Cleveland Browns. We'll do all of that in a minute. But first, remember, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of their over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code Bleav, B-L-E-A-V, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. And let's bring in Bryant McKinnie right now, who enjoyed the comforts of home for the first time in a long time on a weekend. Congrats on that, Big Mac.
Thank you very much. So good to be home.
It always feels good to be home, especially when you travel as much as you do, because you're moving around quite a bit on business and pleasure. And so to be home and take in the final days of the Olympics and a little bit of preseason football was probably okay.
Right. It definitely was. Definitely felt good to be back home and get a chance to hang out with some friends a little bit too.
Yeah. You remember these days, man, the preseason games. I have to imagine for you, it was a lot of like what Harrison Smith did for this game for the Vikings. Like you're watching from the sidelines. When for you did you kind of stop playing in preseason games? Did Childress have you playing in games toward the end of your time with the Vikings?
Like everywhere I went to, they always treated me like as if I was like new to this. Like,
oh, so you were playing?
Yes, I was playing all of them. All the way up until my 12th season.
Yeah.
Back then we had 4 preseason games, so it'd be like, the first game you might have played like a quarter, then second game you play like no, I think first game you played like a series, and then the second game you played like more of like a quarter, and then the third game you played until like the first series after halftime. The fourth game we didn't play at all, so that was always my favorite game, the fourth one.
Dude, I remember those fourth games, man. You guys, you get to the locker room and you're just hoping that Dennis Ryan has just your basketball shorts and a T-shirt out for you, right? No pads, no helmets. Then you know you're just working out pregame, and that's it.
And you sit there and you kind of relax. Do you realize how long the game is when you're not playing? Because it seems different when you're playing because you're being busy. But when you're just standing there on the sideline, you're like, this is kind of long. You're not playing. So it's a total different mindset. It's a little more relaxed mindset, but then also it's like you are more aware of the time. But those guys get a chance to a lot of other guys who are trying to make teams or the Vikings, get film and everything like that so they can either make the team or get picked up by another team.
For sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. And the key in these things, unless you're a rookie trying to bite, scratch, and claw for a roster spot, I mean, you're trying to play, like look good, play well, so you don't get, into an uncomfortable conversation with your position coach the next day in meetings, but then stay healthy, man. I mean, you want to get a sweat in and get hit and get some bumps and bruises maybe, but like you want to get to the start line week 1 healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be as healthy and as confident as you can be going into week 1. You do want to get a feel for game time speed and everything like that, but you also do want to make sure that you make it out healthy.
Yeah. So a few things I wanted to talk to you about from this Vikings performance. They obviously win the game 24-23, and as their head coach predicted in the team meeting the night before, it came down to a field goal by Will Reichard, and he nails the field goal to win the game after having a kick blocked earlier in the game. So he comes back from a little bit of adversity to succeed. And JJ McCarthy did the same thing, Bryant. He threw a pick early in one of his first drives. He throws a pick, one of his first throws, comes back and throws 2 touchdowns. So you had some players experience some adversity early in the game, bounce back, and have a good performance. That's a good sign, right, for young players to take a punch in the face and then bounce back.
It's definitely a good sign. It's definitely a good sign because the main thing is people want to see when people have adversity, how they react to it. And they came right back and fought back and then showed and overcame their adversity and like I said, made the winning field goal, and also threw 2 touchdown passes. So they they show pretty much resilience, and that's good. Like going forward, so like they're not gonna be somebody who gets down in dumps because they made a mistake. It's like, okay, let's move on. How do we get better from here? So that's a good sign.
Yeah. And like when you look at the kicker, Will Reichard, I mean, we don't know if he's going to end up being a great player and a clutch player. Don't know that. But the fact that in his first opportunity in a clutch moment, albeit a preseason game, but still a clutch opportunity, he came through. That's a good start, because if you can't come through in that moment, then there just doubt creeps up, and no athlete wants to deal with doubt. You guys work so hard on your mindset and your mentality. And so what a great way for Will Reichard and JJ McCarthy to start. One thing we talked about, Bryant, last week, both on air and then just, when we were hanging out at the team hotel, is when you are practicing against really good competition, how the benefit that has for you then when you go into games. And Dallas Turner, who the Vikings took in the first round this year as an edge rusher, he had 2 really good rushes in this game. One of them resulted in a sack. And he said after the game, Brian, he's like, hey, basically, I practice against Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. Like, he didn't say this, but he's like, this is light work. When you go against these guys every day in practice, what I went against tonight, it made me better. And I'm like, yeah, Brian and I talked about that, man. That's paying off for him.
And it's true. I always say, like, when Jared Allen came to the Vikings, he made me a better player because we communicated a lot. So we challenged each other, but then we also made sure we communicated to see. He wanted to know what my thoughts were on certain things and how I said, and I wanted to know what his goal was and like why he did certain things as well. So communication too between the two guys, because we're on the same team at the end of the day. It helps both parties out. And then by the time you get in the game, I'm not going against too many people who have the talent level as a Jared Allen. So the game should seem a little, easier. And I felt like that when I was at the University of Miami, I felt like the talent level that I had to go against practice every day with like your Vince Wilforks and then like your,
oh man,
Jerome McDougal's and all those people coming off the edge. I was like, these guys are so good. Like, I'm having a tougher time at practice, than I am in the games. Like, and that's how it should be. So you practice real hard and prepare. Like by the time I go to the games, it should be a little easier.
Yeah. Yeah, so a really good start for Dallas Turner as he gets 2 really good rushes. His sack came on like 3rd and goal after a 15-play drive by the Raiders, and it ended that drive. They had to kick a field goal. So a really key moment or a key sack there in the preseason game for Dallas Turner. There's another individual performance on defense I wanted to ask you about, and this is Levi Drake Rodriguez, who's like, late. Some teams probably had an undrafted grade on him. I think the Vikings got him in the 7th round. And it's interesting because he's been making plays in camp, Bryant, and like getting a little bit of pub. But you always wonder, can he do it in a game? Right. And I'm sure you can remember guys that were on your team where in camp you're like, oh, that guy's he's making some plays here in camp. Let's see if he can do it in the game, right? And then the guy does it in the game, and it's kind of like, pat on the shoulder to him there. It's like, way to go, young pup. You keep it up.
Yeah. So you definitely have guys who are like practice players who are really good at practice, and you have guys who are both, and you have guys who perform a lot better when the lights come on. So he basically can do both because I've seen he had a sack as well. And that's somebody who you'll look at and say, those are the type of people I would cheer for. Like, I've seen them do all this stuff at practice. So now when we get in the game situation, I want to see you do this against somebody else because you gave us a hard time. So those are definitely the people who I've definitely cheered for in the past when they were my teammates. So it was good to see that he was able to, convert it over to the field and do it under the lights too, because that's very important. So not only is he making plays at practice, they also can see that he's making plays on the field. So
yeah.
He does the next 2 preseason games. He should be a lock. I mean, a lock him for sure to make the team.
Yeah, and that's a great find. When you can get a player who can produce for you in the late rounds, 7th rounds, undrafted guys, I mean, that's awesome because you got to dedicate your salary cap, to Darrisaw and O'Neill and Hawkinson and Jefferson, right? So to get a guy at a value like that is awesome for the defense. I thought overall, Bryant, defensively, watching that game back, the first team defense struggled a little bit. They gave up a lot of long drives and 17 points in the first 3 drives of the game. And then I thought the reserves and backups came in and really leveled it off for them. So overall, a good showing for the defense. Offensively, I was, kind of like, unless you really watch the tape back, I think offensive line play is tricky to figure out, was it really good or not. But I think a key is no sacks. So the Vikings didn't allow any sacks. That's a great indicator for the offensive line, right?
Yeah.
And then they averaged 6.5 yards a carry running the ball. So when you look at those two things, it's hard to really say anything
Well, we
but
can't discuss the
positive.
offensive line when you say there's no sacks. I don't know how many hurries they have, but no sacks, and then six yards per carry. Come on, the O-line is doing their job.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you have to look at other areas of who are these catches being made or like what's going on. But I don't know, and we got to also look at the penalties too. The amount of penalties that might have been taking place during the game too, because those are key things too.
That's a really good point. Because when Kevin O'Connell was talking to the media after the game, he did mention some procedural penalties where we shot ourselves in the foot. We got to clean those up. So you're right. And what's the process for that? When penalties happen, did you guys break that down and talk about why did this happen? Why were we lined up illegally here? What happened? Is that something that you break down?
That's a matter of kind of focus or knowing your assignment. Those are things that are correctable. You just have to go in there and watch the film and just correct those. And then the goal for next, week would be less penalties than we had, this opening game. Because you want to really minimize the penalties. Since basically you're just giving people, free yardage. So you kind of minimize the penalties and try to play as clean of a game as possible.
Yeah. Because, you're sitting there going it's hard enough to play these 5 positions up front with
right.
big men who are trying to, hand-to-hand combat and kick your butt every snap.
And they're there every play. We don't sub out.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're there every play. Along us and the quarterback, we're there every play. We don't rotate in and out with anybody else. Everybody else gets to rotate out.
Yes, it's hard enough just doing your job, and then you make it even worse with those, self-inflicted wounds. That's no fun. So yeah, a few things to clean up there penalty-wise for the Vikings offensive line, but overall a really good performance, I thought, by the guys up front. And Kevin O'Connell seemed to agree because he's like, the quarterback should be in the locker room right now. The first thing they should talk about when they speak to reporters is the offensive line, because no sacks. Yeah, and 6.5 yards a carry. There was a 48-yard touchdown run in there. And the other thing, too, is the quarterbacks didn't have a lot of runs. And that's another kind of thing I look at, too, because it's like if the quarterback's got 7 rushing attempts, that might mean that he was fleeing pressure, right?
Yeah.
And so overall, I thought a really clean game by the Vikings offensive line. So you want to see that continue. Now, they're going to be tested this week, Bryant, because they go to Cleveland for 2 days of practices. And then they play a preseason game against the Browns. And, the Browns have a great defensive front with Myles Garrett and all those guys.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun test. And I don't know. I think we went and practiced against the Chiefs a couple of times, or they came to Mankato. Yeah. What did you think of those inter-squad scrimmages when you play against another team in practice?
We were always excited to do it because we were tired of going against each other at that point all the time. So it was like, you kind of get a chance to everything that you practiced against your teammates. You're now getting a chance to kind of unleash it on a real opponent. So you were kind of happy to get a chance to go with against somebody who isn't as familiar, because you practice with the same guys every day. You start to get familiar with each other's tendencies and things that people like to do. So now it's like, okay, let's try this on somebody else. This is the closest thing we can get to a game situation because this is not our teammate. So I used to like those practices, but we used to. I don't know why, but it was like they were like a rival. I don't know. It used to be like squad scrimmage, like fights and stuff going on back then. I don't know why, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
remember we had Brock Lesnar. He suplexed somebody. I don't know. It was crazy.
No way.
It was like a scuffle one time. I remember.
Well, and you know who else would be involved in those every now and then was Jared. He'd get into the mix on that.
Oh, yeah,
and he was on both sides of it.
Team back then.
Yeah, but see, I know you can't understand why, Bryant, because no one would mess with you, because you throw down. You're going to throw down.
It bother me too much, but I would have to kind of get in there to defend some of my teammates and things.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't think many people are going to mess with you at 6'8", and in the way you would be imposing on those guys. Yeah, but there were some scuffles last week in training camps across the league, and the league responded with a memo saying, we're going to fine you guys if there are scuffles, so they want
to
that
me, it's
to be
hard. It's
cracked
hard
down.
to stop scuffles. People are hot and agitated.
Yeah.
It's summer. So your temper is a little shorter. You're out there at practice every day. It's agitated. It's irritation, and a lot of it has to do with probably like the temperature of it being hot. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody really wants to get into these scuffles. Like I remember at one point we would have like little scuffles within the O line or D line, and they would make after they get in their fight, they would make them still play. Like normally you're like let them rest like this. No, now y'all want to fight, you still have to go in here and run these plays. Like they'd be exhausted, but it was just like kind of showing them like this is why you don't waste your energy on that. But I mean, I just feel like it's going to happen just because of the competition, and the heat plays a big factor in it too. People can get a little moody and cranky when they're hot. So that's all it is. It's nothing too serious. And a lot of that doesn't get carried. Like it just gets left on the field. It's just part of what it's been going on forever. You can't it's hard to stop it. It just happens naturally.
Yeah, I think as long as you're staying away from things that just go across the line and there's no cheap shots and people are staying healthy. Part of it as a coach, you almost kind of snicker
They do because they see that who's feisty. It shows you like who's feisty, who like whatever. So it shows some characteristics that they are probably like, oh, okay, I expect. Sometimes they don't expect it out of people too. So it just shows some things, some character in some people.
Yep. So let's talk about JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold Bryant. We've discussed kind of how we feel that the Vikings would be wise to bring McCarthy along, not slowly, but not put pressure on him to be the starter. And it definitely appears that's what the team is doing. I think Sam Darnold responded well. He looked pretty sharp in the game. So it looks to me, based on what I'm seeing and hearing, and you've actually been there on hand yourself watching practice and been around the team. I'm impressed with the process here of bringing McCarthy along. He looked good in the preseason game. I just give the team 2 thumbs up for the way they're developing McCarthy so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're doing a great job. I think they're doing what's needed to be done and is allowing him to learn from a veteran. And like I said, don't rush the process. Don't make him feel rushed. And gradually, when they feel comfortable with him, and they'll move him up. I feel like the same thing kind of happened with Adrian Peterson when I was there. Like you could see he was going to be a great running back, but he just had to learn everything and get comfortable with everything on the pass protection side to make him more of a complete player. And then he eventually took over that spot from Chester Taylor. So it's like you just have to give people time. And once you do that, and I feel like they'll execute well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out. At the same time, I think Darnold is going to play at a higher level too because he knows he has somebody potentially breathing down his neck too. So that's going to make him raise his level up too. So friendly competition is always good.
And if you're thinking about Sam Darnold, it's like he looked pretty good, I thought. I mean, I'm not sitting there breaking down every throw. I'm watching it like everyone else is watching it, but I go back and watch it again a couple times. I mean, he was 4 of 8 for 59 yards and was fine. But it was without Justin Jefferson too. So it's like, like add that guy back to the mix and you think Darnold's going to look even better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So I just feel like it's a good like friendly rivalry, like a little competition, which makes both players better.
Yep, for sure. And that interception by McCarthy looks to me like he knew it after he threw it, came over to the sideline. Like he wasn't deer in the headlights and an awful interception. I think it was he was on the run. He was throwing on the run a little bit. The pocket got a little dirty. I think he got spooked a little too easily, got out of there, threw on the run, and a really good defensive back undercut the route and picked it off. I'm not totally excusing it, but to me, it's an interception that's like within the bounds. It's like within the normal area of play. I think he probably learned a lot from it. And if anything, it's like maybe this is good because he can learn from something.
That's the most important thing is that he learned something from it. And like you said, you felt like he was aware of where it went wrong. And that's the most important thing is knowing like, okay, I did this wrong and I know how to correct it. And he came back out on the field and kind of showed like, I learned from that and I'm going to go out here now and execute these 2 touchdown passes.
Yeah. So there were some players who didn't play in this game. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Harrison Smith, Justin Jefferson did not play. Gabriel Murphy, who's an undrafted player and a really good pass rusher, he did not play in this game. TJ Hawkinson didn't play. Robert Tunyon didn't play. So I think some of those guys will probably continue to Shaq Griffin didn't play. Will continue to sort of heal from those bumps and bruises. Jonathan Grenard did not play. They probably held him out just to keep him healthy. I expect those guys, though, to play a bunch and practice a bunch here against the Browns, because I have to imagine that Kevin O'Connell and Kevin Stefanski can't wait for these practices against each other, because it's almost like another preseason game, but you get to control it a little bit more than you get to control a game. So these two practices against the Browns, I think, are huge for the Vikings, preparing for the season. I'm excited to see what happens in the practices, read reports about it, and then watch that preseason game. In your mind, Bryant, what can you accomplish working against another team, like from an actual like football standpoint? Do you do more like competitive periods, like team periods, situational stuff? Can you do more of that when you're going against another team?
Yeah, I would. I'm more of a person who I always like to be in a game situation so I can see how I react to whether there's stunts and things like that. So I feel like you can do more of those. Instead of like individual drills, you definitely want to take the advantage to be able to utilize the other players on the other side and do more like team and inside run and those type of drills against those guys. I'm looking forward to even seeing Kevin Stefanski, because he worked for the Vikings when I was there. So now he's the head coach over at Cleveland. So I'm pretty sure he's excited just to go against the Vikings just because of the history as well.
That's a good point, Big Mac. He was like Brad Childress's administrative assistant, right? And then I'd see him in the mornings. He's like laminating the practice scripts for the day, and like he's working on the bus schedule and the hotel schedule. That's how he started in Minnesota.
It is
crazy.
It's crazy. Like there's a few people who are like even Pittsburgh's head coach. He was defensive coordinator. Like there's a lot of different people that's come through Minnesota that are now like in different positions now. Like that from when I was there to like now. So it's good to see the growth.
Yeah, it's fun. It's I would even be like just a staff member. We had a communications team where we just talked about like, these are the things the press releases we're going to send out, the press conferences we're going to have. Like he would be in those meetings,
Right.
and like he would never be in one of those now, but he just progressively grew underneath Brad Childress, and then he stuck around after Brad left. It was Leslie was the head coach, and Kevin stuck around with that, and he stuck around with Zim and just continued to grow. So really a cool process for Kevin Stefanski, and now he's a head coach in the NFL. And you know what's cool, Bryant, is if I text him right now, like he'll respond, like he still remembers where he came from. He's not too cool for it anymore.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that'll be a lot of fun. The Vikings do practice tonight. The one that got postponed when you were here.
Yeah, that moved back to tonight, right?
Yeah, and I'm gonna go and watch it. So
okay.
I'll let you know what I think and what I see. So training camp continues in Eagan for the Vikings, but they will travel to Cleveland later this week and practice twice against the Browns, then play a preseason game against the Browns before they finish the preseason with their third and final preseason game 2 weeks from now, also on Saturday. So, regular season's coming. It's not quite there. The team's trying to get through training camp and the preseason, but one of 3 preseason games down. The Vikings win that one 24-23. Next time we chat, Brian, it'll be to break down that Vikings-Browns preseason game. So we'll do that a week from today. You mentioned one thing that I wanted to go back to, and that's team run periods in training camp practices. I have to tell you, you might not agree with me. I loved the 9-on-7 drill in team periods. That was like, I loved it because you knew it was a run. So nine players on offense, including the quarterback and running back, 7 on defense. And I'm like just the collision, the sound of pads and helmets crunching. That's when I felt like, okay, it's football season. 9-on-7 run drill. Let's go. Let's see who can move the line of scrimmage. You know what I mean?
I liked it too because it just prepared. They knew it was like you said, they knew it was a run. They just weren't sure which way. But I like team more because it made them have to think more of if it was a run or a pass or play action. You know what I'm saying? So me mentally, I could be able to change up my stance and make them think one or the other. Like if it's play action, I can make them think it's pass. I could do different things with my stance from a standpoint mentally. But it's not running. Like y'all know it's run. It's just y'all have to figure out where which hole or which direction we're going to. But yeah, I didn't really mind inside run though either. But I knew it would make it easier for me when I got the team.
Yep. And I always felt like the teams that were good in those environments, like if you could run the ball effectively in that drill, I felt like you had a good chance to be good in the red zone. Because once you get down in that constricted area, you got to be able to run the ball. It's harder to pass. There's less
and
field.
Sometimes you have to have the attitude. I feel like the Eagles have the attitude where we don't care if you know us run, stop us. You know what I'm saying? So and that just becomes a more physical offensive line and being okay with just trying to just shove the ball down your throat. So yeah, I like it.
All right. Well, we'll be seeing some highlights from those periods for the Vikings as they get physical and go down to Cleveland and practice against the Browns and get some good competition in here during training camp in the preseason. And then a week from today, Brian and I will break down the Vikings-Browns preseason game, see how much progress the Vikings can make between now and then. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, Big Mac, that's it for today, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching this episode of Bleav in Vikings. We thank you for joining us, and make sure you like, follow, and subscribe Bleav in Vikings. We are where all of your other favorite podcasts and football content can be found. All of the major podcasting platforms, we are there. Go there, subscribe, and you can catch every episode of Bleav in Vikings with Bryant McKinnie. That's it for today's show. We thank you all for watching. Remember, everyone, keep believing.